It's really good that you shared it on Instagram or Twitter or wherever it was where you shared your screenshot. You shared it on both. And the conversations, I don't know what happened on Twitter because I can't I can, but I don't log in anymore to
No,
Twitter.
don't. No, keep not logging in.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. But I can see on Instagram the comments that came back from that, and so many people engaged with that post. And I think if it had come from me, it wouldn't have reached those people anyway because I'm not connected to them. But it connected to some amazing people, and I think that it was great that you posted it. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And that's why I want to talk about it more too.
Yeah.
And we can reach even more people.
Yeah.
I think we have some mutual amazing people that we both know that I think helps too.
Yes, though my interactions, so for someone who's really into connections, I've really let them go.
I get it.
Just not, yeah, it's a whole thing and lots of things involved. But I, I love what you share and I love how you share things, and so I was so grateful that it was you who shared about the Creative Island in the first place. And I love what people wrote back. I loved seeing how they took it and what their sort of take on it was. And yeah. I did some
Well,
research, so I did do some homework, and I found our first conversation was in August of 2021, which is fitting, I feel, and nice. I love cyclical things and just when things line up a little bit. We're not on the 20th of August recording this, but it's close, and I just feel
we're
like
very
that's
close.
nice.
Yeah. It's right there.
Was
Yeah,
that
I did
intentional?
know. No, I actually when I went and found those screenshots, I was like, oh wow, it's been almost exactly 3 years,
That's crazy.
which was kind of surprising. I don't know if there's a astrological thing that brought us back around here at this time of year. I got a lot of August stuff going on. We got like a triple birthday party coming up here next weekend
Oh, exciting.
because two of my sons and my grandson are
Oh,
all August birthdays, uh, and yeah, it's the birthday of the Creative Island Twitter post.
yes. It was meant to be. I love it. I love it so much. For me, August is when I did the first Sunshine Summit, and I wanted that to be all about connections and sharing other people's creativity. And that was huge and amazing for me. And then putting that together was a lot. And I realized that I hadn't, so prior to that, I had spent some time on a creative island and made things without being on social media and without having sunshine and power cuts. And that's where the whole 7 Days of Sunshine challenge comes from. I did share that with the world in the end, but I made that on my own. And I loved that process. It was really uplifting and it was work. It was hard and it was just a
Right.
challenge to myself. But after the Sunshine Summit, I did a lot of things for other people and I sort of put my Creative Island stuff on the back burner. And so when I got to connect with you properly, because I knew of you and we were connected on Instagram, and I saw you post your pictures of the podcast mug that you
Oh
had.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I was stoked because I'd been thinking about it for a while, thinking I need to make, like, I follow people. I need to really connect with them because, I was feeling a bit like at a loss or just like I needed to make connections right then. It was important. So I
Right.
was like, I have heaps of podcast mugs. I love them. I collect them. I've been gifted some. And I'm going to just reach out and say, I have podcast mugs too. Like, I like your one. And it went from there because we didn't really talk before that. And,
I remember being surprised that you knew who I was.
oh, really?
Because you were somebody that I was aware of. I think because we had so many mutual friends, I had heard of you. I had listened to Sunshine and Powercuts. You were just one of those people that I felt like, oh, this is somebody. I think when I started podcasting, I think I just knew that you were like somebody who was in the podcast space, who was a successful independent podcaster. And I was just like, oh yeah, yeah, I know who Heather is. and I might have said hi to you on Twitter or something one time or interacted with you passingly, but I'm like, I do that all the time with people
Yeah.
that I'm aware of where I just respond to them.
Yeah.
And then they may, like something or just respond back or even follow me back. But I'm always like, yeah, but they're not paying attention. Like it's like actually kind of like on the same level of like somebody who's like famous in the world. They may like your post or whoever's running their social media, but they're not really paying attention to what you're doing. And I just figured that you were one of those people who was busy in her own world and running podcasts that was really unique and really interesting and had this community built in already. And I was just like, yeah, I know who Heather is, but I don't think she knows who I am.
Oh.
And so I think when you reached out to me, I was like really surprised because I was just like, oh, that's odd. Like, why does she know who I am? Like, because I'm not I just felt I always feel like I'm in my own little corner doing my own little thing, and I think it's probably a lot of us feel this way where it's like, oh, my 12 people that I interact with on a regular basis, that's who pays attention to me. And now with the algorithm's prevalence, that's kind of just what it's become,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was really surprised that you interacted with me and that I was like, oh, she follows me, and does she know who I am? She has to know who I am just through mutuals or whatever, like Paul Chomo and Kate, and a few other people that I think we both just sort of were in the sphere of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I just remember being really surprised that you knew that you reached out to me and that you knew who I was.
That's funny because I feel like that happens too often, and I see people doing awesome things, and like I love the way you share things, and I love how creative you are, and you're a talented artist and everything, and I was glad that you shared that mug because then I found a way to bridge the gap and go, hey, and like insert myself in your life because I feel like I wish I had more time for a lot more people too. And this is like a whole tangent, but I'm so grateful that we connected in a way that we kept talking afterwards because my conversations with you have helped my journey immensely. I'm not sure if you're aware of how much, but I try and let you know every now and then. Just
You tell me that, but I don't see myself as a super helpful person most of the time. So I think it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, like, like I just try to listen. I don't know that I have good advice. My life's a mess, so I can't imagine that I'm helping anybody else with theirs. But it's nice to hear. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think like since we've connected anyway, we've found that we've got a lot of things we've got in common apart from podcast mugs, and um, just your you've got patience. Well, you have for me, and I think you're very tolerant of my ramblings and everything. But it's more than that. It's been a give and take too, I think, and I just appreciate having you there that I can chat to and share things with. And this whole, I don't know when exactly we connected around the podcast mugs, whether that was in 2021, and then our Creative Island chat came after. How far after that it came about, but you're inspirational because you create and you share things, and I love what you do. And just having our chats, being able to share our ideas and what we're working on, and you've looked over things that I've like scripts. I think it was for Not Just Heather's or Just Heather's podcasts when I was doing those, and I appreciated your eyes and your opinions, and sharing personal stuff too. And it's just been amazing finding a bit of a kindred spirit, I think. Who's very creative at heart, and yeah, I love seeing your progress because you've mentioned as we gone along that you've been like working on it, and I feel a little bit bad because I haven't been like coming up with well, our chat, I think, back in 2021 was something like, um, did we have a call before that, or were we just talking in?
I'm so bad with dates, Heather. I'm so bad with like piecing timeline stuff together that I can't remember exactly when our first conversation was about that.
No, me neither.
Um, but before we get too far away from it, I do want to say that it is like really mutual. I think you've been like a really supportive friend to me, and the fact that uh, you you knew who I was, and I looked up to you as a creator, and on that level was really cool. But then to sort of get to know you on a personal level and become friends with you, even though we're on opposite sides of the globe, I do feel like I found a lot of overlap with you. Like, oh, we both love nature and black cats and creating things, and I just I feel like you understand me. You're one of those people that every once in a while you just meet somebody who really like gets you,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm not understood by a lot of people
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
So it has been really good for me to connect with you as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
So whatever the nice things you say about me, I don't want you to think that that's one-sided in any way. I think you've been super helpful, just in every way. You've been super encouraging and supporting, and actually, I had an interview come out this week that I did with a like an online magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted a picture of me, and I didn't have like a current picture of me, anything that looked like professional, because all the pictures of me have Leo in them. So it's like in the last year, like so I had Christy take a picture of me with like my drawing board and kind of semi-professional photograph, and I have a mug of pencils, and it just got cropped out. You can see it, but it is my Sunshine and Power mugs or
Ah,
Powercuts mug that I had. I had it sitting right in the front, and it got cropped out of the final photo, but because I didn't place it exactly right. But
yeah.
yeah, I did put your mug in there.
Oh,
It's good intentions. I'm sorry.
no.
It didn't make it. But yeah, no, it's been great to get to know you over the last few years
Yeah.
and talk about this stuff. I don't want you to feel bad because you haven't worked on your creative island project.
Oh, no,
What
I
you
didn't.
feel is enough.
No, no, no. And like in our conversations that's come about, like you've asked how I'm going, and I will say, like, oh, all this other stuff, and I haven't done anything. And it's great because you identify, like you say, with like we get each other. So you identify with stuff that I'm saying about my creativity and my struggles and whatever. And I think that's how it came about, where we were feeling at different points. You can have highs and lows in creativity. It comes and goes. You can be inspired by things and have a muse and whatever else and be just it leaking out of you. And then other times you kind of have to drag it out, kicking and
Oh, for
screaming,
sure.
or you don't do it. And it's so my comment about me not working on mine is not, it's just a thing. It's like I, I needed a way of sort of referencing my different levels of creativity because I felt like I gave so much of myself in creative pursuits. And I didn't do as much as some people, and I haven't kept it going. And that's neither great nor bad. It's just what it is. I like to I like to run myself down a lot because I think I should achieve more than I am, whether that be for myself or for other people. And so I needed a way of looking at like what I do for myself, which was that whole creative island aspect, where you're just somewhere in your office, in a space somewhere, could be on a bus, I don't know, in a journal, making something for yourself. And I used to do that so much when I was younger. Like I used to write poetry all the time. And I didn't write a journal like a diary journal. I just expressed myself in poetry or music. But I still felt music was a little bit tainted because I was doing it for school and for other stuff and it wasn't really my own thing. I would practice at home, but it was still practicing for something, not really
Right.
just mucking around. And Yeah. Um, when we have the low points and we feel like it's not working out really well or we're kind of stuck or whatever, it's really good to have that person or people or a support of some kind of where you can let it out and share that and just say, oh, I'm struggling. And someone else go, yeah, I get it. That's tough. I'm sorry it's not working out for you. Not necessarily providing solutions, although I tend to do that because I like to help people fix their problems. So, but yeah, I think that just after we talked about this creative island thing, that helped me because I hadn't really put that into a thing either. I just thought some things I do for me, other things I do out there for other people, and it's been a thing that I get hung up on because I now don't do the things for myself. Um, I will always jump at the first opportunity to help someone else and put mine on the back burner. And then, even though it's not my intention, eventually I'll get round to the point where I'll drag myself down because I think, well, I've spent all this time doing this other stuff, even though I'm wanting to do it, like my intentions are good. I will still run myself down for not prioritizing my things. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I've had
I
to
think
sit with
that's
that for the
a
last couple of years.
I think that's a real natural thing to do
Yeah.
because my Creative Island project is a graphic novel.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a lot of work. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I've been working on it for um going on 3 years now.
Yeah.
According to my Instagram feed,
Yeah.
it's been almost exactly 3 years, and I'm doing that in between other projects, and I'm doing it when I have time. And sometimes when I get to the end of a project or a freelance assignment or a story that I'm working on with Derek, um, I have a weekend that I don't have any other jobs booked up, and I know I should be working on my island, but I'm just sort of like, no, I'm going to take it easy this weekend, which is valuable too.
Hmm.
But I always end up kind of beating myself up for it. And I'll look at it and just go, you should have worked on it this weekend. You would have gotten more done. You should stay up an extra 20 to 30 minutes at night and just put a little bit of extra work in, just go to bed a little bit late. I find all these little pockets where I could be getting work done on it. And if I don't take them, it's really, really easy for me to go, you're not dedicated enough to this, and just really sort of uh, shit talk myself, basically. But that's not productive either,
No.
honestly. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, I do need to relax. Sometimes I do need to go to bed because I'm exhausted. And sometimes I'm playing with the baby, or I got family stuff going on, and I can't get mad at myself for prioritizing things like things like that, like taking care of myself or taking care of my family.
Yeah.
I I did a lot of stuff when my kids were young where I did prioritize work, and I did the hustle culture kind of thing where I was like always trying to break through, I was just trying to get work as much as and I miss stuff, and it's just like I don't want to do that anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those things you have to another hard lesson to learn, I think, sometimes is like you have to take it easy on yourself for not prioritizing something that is a priority to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And giving yourself the grace to not do it either. Like your creative island
Yeah,
shouldn't be a chore.
exactly. The
Yeah.
whole concept. I guess we should lay it out
Yeah.
if we're going to put this out for people to listen to. Do you want to describe the concept of the creative island?
For me, it's just having a space where I'm making something for me and it's not on a time frame. It's not for someone else. There isn't really input from anyone else. The purpose is just to spend time making something, creating something, whatever it is, writing something, recording something, doesn't matter. Just time when you're creatively isolated, and not in a bad way either. Like, it sounds, isolation sounds a bit extreme, but just some people do shut themselves off and like go all in. And if you're especially inspired or something, that's amazing. Go do that. But just, I more look at it as like having a space that's just for me, that isn't tied to anyone or to anything else, and that I can just be expressive.
Yeah, that's it's it's creative selfish.
Yeah.
It's like, this is for me, not for anyone else. No, I like that definition of you define it as like the time spent doing it, like the action of being creative.
And where you're
And I
doing
like
it
that.
and how you're doing it. Because I have an office that I is my own space. And if I didn't have that, I would struggle hard with life, because I feel like I work from home, so the blurred lines of whose space is what, and
Sure.
the time to myself, so I had to feel a little bit selfish and take a space and time for me that was just my own.
When we started talking about this, I recently dug them up, like the Trello boards that we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Uh, um, where it was like, I think we had a board that was, describe your creative space, and it was, I went around, took pictures of the plants and all the stuff in my office. Now I've created a new board of, when I get an office again, this is what I've sort of put a wish list out there, and like, this is what I want it to be. And I'm going to build like this ultimate creative space kind of thing. Which, yeah, for that very reason, I think the idea of separating yourself from the rest of your life, that sounds horrible, but
I think,
kind of secluding yourself with intention, with
yeah.
with the intention of like making something.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
again, I just love the idea of the action of making the thing is more important than the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not exactly what you're saying, but like, that's how it sounded to me. And I really love that. I love the idea of making something being the joy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. You hit the nail on the head. I think that um, it, our connection and talking about Creative Island together and making the Trello board, that's amazing, because then you captured what your space was before. And like, I don't have photos of my office, and my office has gone through some changes over the time, but still in the same room. I'm lucky it hasn't completely disappeared. But like, even just capturing that kind of history of how my space has changed would be cool. But the making the thing is the important thing, not what it is, not how it turns out, just the time and the space to make the thing. And it's recharging our batteries. Like, I'm introverted, so I don't do very well. I don't know whether that's the same thing. Like, I was looking at the comments from when you shared it on social media about Creative Island. So great to see so many interacting with it and engaging with it and commenting, and what they thought of it and how their creative process kind of works, which is different for everyone. But I have lost my train of thought.
Introvert.
Oh, yes,
Um,
introverted. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
Jeez,
And
sorry.
let's walk it back. Like,
Thanks, Phil.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so introverted, love that, but love people, but need my own space and time to recharge. And I think we all need that. Like, and I like the idea of an island that sounds tropical, and it sounds like a holiday, and it sounds positive, rather than the isolation part that it could be.
Well, you live on an island, so it
This
makes
is
sense for
true.
you. Yeah, like, I have like a creative peninsula over here. It's like, I can walk to the mainland if I have to. Um, but no, I'm absolutely an introvert as well. to the point where the brief time that I did work at home, I did about 6 or 7 months where I did freelance work at home, and I would have to make myself leave the house every day
Yeah.
because it's very easy for me to sit home and kind of I will cut myself off if I allow myself to, and then that takes a real mental health toll.
Yeah.
But I do get a real recharge um out of doing creative work at home,
Yeah.
and that's been a lot of my island has been about uh, the same thing as I didn't really realize it at first, but it is very process based for me. Like I love drawing comic book pages,
Mm-hmm.
like and I just love the act of drawing them. It's
Yeah.
like I to the point where I finished the pages for my graphic novel a couple months ago, and I am now going through and revising. It's a long story about the evolution of this thing, but I'm drawing more pages for it now. Like I'm actually like finding holes, and I'm like, well, I can do some more here. And it's like this is one of those projects that I just feel like this is never going to end. It's never going to be finished. I will just keep drawing this thing forever. And I don't care if that's honestly what it ends up being. This was a thing that, for me, this started as like, let me create a project where it is just what I want to do, and with no expectation for, um, no expectation for like trying to please an audience, right?
Yeah.
Uh, um, just this is my sort of like pure creative vision, and then but I did want to at some point release it. I wanted to finish it and share it with the world and just see what it would do. And
Yeah.
then it's like I would have to kind of talk myself out of it and go, no, if you do that, then you care what people think. It's not pure, and it's just sort of like, no, you can kind of have both.
Yeah.
And but like the idea of actually putting it out is it's something that I think I would like to share it with people. I would like to actually finish it at some point, but it's become one of those things where it's just sort of like if I'm always working on this, I don't care because I just enjoy working on it so much. I'm revising the script again. I've rewritten the script like 4 times now. I'm drawing more pages for it. I'm going to make some more changes to it when I'm done with the batch of 10 pages that I'm currently working on. I just love working on it, and I have this isn't a for hire job. It's not for a client. I'm partnered with Derek Glasscock. He and I are working on for a comic series right now. We haven't started releasing it, but we are working on this, and we are trying to make this sort of like a commercial venture. We're having a lot of fun with it. But it's not that. This thing I'm working on is purely just for the joy of working on it now. And I love that I have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that for you too. I'm so happy for you.
Well, thanks. I mean,
You can hear the joy in your voice just when you were describing that just now. You can hear it.
it's the thing we all start doing it for, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like we all know people like um, who, I mean, podcasting is a great example. Like, how many people do you know that got into podcasting because they thought there was money in it?
I don't know, but
And it is a wild miscalculation.
yeah.
But there are people who come in because they see like the Mark Marons of the world and the Dollop and these huge podcasts that belong to big corporate podcast networks that generate income, and they think that's a way to get into entertainment, or
Yeah.
that's a way to and it's just sort of like yes, it's wildly misguided, but these aren't people who are coming in because they love podcasting. Comics has a lot of that too. There's a lot of people who are trying to backdoor their way into Hollywood, or comic book movies are making $1 billion, so they think that comic books will make $1 billion. And you just have to tell them all this. It's like podcasting. It is a fool's errand to go and chase money that way.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like we get into these things because we like doing the work. And I think when you hold a project for yourself, like that you do just for the joy of doing it, I think it kind of helps keep that alive
Absolutely.
instead of, you see people who like, they just get into, they get into the business side of it so much that they just don't even seem like they're enjoying it anymore.
Yeah, they get
And
into the weeds and it
that's
takes them away from the thing that they started with.
right, exactly.
Well, I think you hit an important point there. Like the Creative Island project or thing is, it's not exhausting. It gives you, it's like fueling that fire. It's adding
Yeah.
to, it's keeping your passion alive. And I think that's what I struggled with Sunshine and Powercuts because I had an idea and I started out making that on my own, which is the 7 Days of Sunshine challenge. That was before I'd done anything, and so I loved that and I'm happy with it how it turned out and it was my best thing that I've made. Like the podcast is secondary, that I'm extremely proud of. Um and when I got into podcasting, I loved the idea of it. I loved just sharing because who's going to look for a podcast called Sunshine and Power Cuts anyway? It's not built for SEO, like search engine optimization. It's not built
Right,
for that.
right.
It's just a thing, and I was happy to talk. And then, like, the pressure of social media and making connections and getting it out there and downloads and um, trying to be on top of all these things and then just trying to get through life and the shit show that is sometimes. I burnt myself out
Yeah.
on trying to make a thing that I was passionate about, but then I became not passionate about because I'd set myself up this dual element to it where I loved the Sunshine episodes because I could base that off of what I'd already created with the 7 Days of Sunshine challenge. But then I had to go forward from there, and then I was not in a good headspace, so I couldn't make those. And it all just fell in on itself. And I don't know, that's sort of where Just Heathers came from because I wanted just something that I could make and share but not have anything. And then I ruined that too by like putting too much pressure on myself, having lots of amazing conversations with people and then like the pressure of trying to edit them and get them out. So I'm sorry that your episode never made it to air yet. All these years later,
Oh,
just oh.
stop apologizing. You're not allowed to apologize. No, I understand all of that completely. Look,
Yeah.
I love drawing comic pages. You know what I hate doing? I hate coloring pages, and
Oh yeah.
I any work I have to do on a computer.
Yeah.
So for me, that's I don't hate it. I like when it gets done.
Yeah.
I like the lettering. I like the finished product of it, but I don't enjoy the process of it as much. And the same thing, like, look, Austin and I will make a podcast, and unless there's anything egregious that needs to be cut out, I don't edit it.
Yeah.
I cut the beginning and the end. I do a noise gate pass on it basically, and I throw it out there. And there are some episodes where we where there is a line in the episode where I will actually say, I'll cut that out later. And it's in the final episode, along with the mistake that I made before that. Or us, hey, get the cat out of here. Don't worry, I'll cut this when we're done. And it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I get it. You don't have to apologize for not editing to me. But no, because for Austin and I, it's very similar. It is like the joy of recording one of those podcasts or the joy of podcasting with that is the conversation that we have.
Yeah.
That's core.
Yeah.
And we don't have a big listenership. So we're not really, it is almost a creative island
Yeah.
kind of project for the two of us where we do this because we just enjoy doing it. And life happened and got in the way. We haven't done an episode since like last Christmas. We just kind of put ourselves on hiatus, and we're like, when we get some breathing room, we'll sort out the schedule and move forward. But we're not putting pressure on ourselves in that same way.
I love that, and I'm glad that's the mindset around
It's
it.
very easy to do when you're not successful. You're not dependent on money coming in from it or anything. But it is just sort of like we do this show on our terms,
Yeah.
and we do the show because it lets my son and I watch a movie together and have a conversation. It's almost like a bonding thing that we've always done. We just do it with a microphone now. Like we've always just loved talking about movies.
And I
So
love that. That I think that is amazing. That is so good, and hold on to that. Like we can get hung up on like our measures of success. And I talked to Paul Chomo many years ago about how we measure success. And I think for me, I'm still hung up on that a lot, which is why I just feel like everything's failed. But um, when you can have the mindset around something, sticking with your why, like knowing why you started something, being passionate about it, and
right.
going with that and making it work so that it's not going to impinge on the happiness and joy and ease that you get out of it, of just doing the thing and having the conversation and watching the movie and bonding, that's huge. I think, yeah, that's how a lot of things. I wish it was easier, but I'm glad that like we can have conversations like this and think about the creative island thing to remind ourselves that it is possible.
Yeah, 100%. I think Paul's a smart guy.
Yeah.
Uh, like the idea of like measures of success, that's a conversation you can have with Paul,
Yeah,
like because I think he really understands it. Like success means different things to different people,
absolutely.
you know. Um, I used to really despise having a day job because it meant that in with my art, I wasn't succeeding. I
Hmm.
hadn't succeeded enough to get rid of my day job.
Yeah.
And now I really look at, I mean, clearly I'd love to spend all my hours doing what I love to do.
Hmm.
But the way I look at, I shifted to look at my day job probably like 10 years ago is my day job is the thing that allows me a creative freedom because I don't have to take every commission that I don't want to take or every
Yeah.
design job that maybe isn't I'm not passionate about or I don't I make money somewhere else. I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And it really like that kind of mindset really has freed me up to do things like my Creative Island project,
Yeah.
to do things like my podcast and not worry about numbers and
Yeah.
not worry about uh you know I'm my mortgage isn't dependent
Yeah.
on on this. So it allows me all kinds of freedom. A quick tangent is that Austin saw the new M. Night Shyamalan movie last night.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I think it's called Trap. I haven't seen it yet, but we had a big talk today over text about just how M. Night Shyamalan has just become this guy who I think has enough financial freedom that he can just kind of make what he wants. So
Yeah.
he's making all these like really weird, uh, interesting movies that aren't necessarily like great movies, but I always think they're really interesting. I'm like a Shyamalan apologist. Like I saw Old. I don't think Old is a particularly good movie, but I think it's a really interesting movie. And I'm like, I think he's just sort of interested by these things, and he has the creative freedom to make these kind of like mid-budget interesting weird movies that he wants to make, and I really admire that. I just
Yeah.
really respect that this guy has figured it out enough to go, yeah, I don't have to make like some masterpiece that will make $1 billion. I can just make this weird little thing that I want to make. And that's the kind of thing I think is just like super inspiring to me is when you see somebody who's figured it out
Yeah.
um, in that way, and they get to make something that is commercially successful by their measure, even if it's not like by a big Hollywood studio measure. But it's also like a passion project for them, and I just really marvel at people who have done that in a big way, and it just sort of gives me something to kind of shoot for while I'm making my personal project. I can just kind of go, well, I've got this other thing I'm doing with Derek. Um, and I I want this to be commercially successful, but I also want, I want to work on it, and I
Yeah.
do. We're making some really like creative things, and I think what working on my island project for the last 3 years has done is it's made me more willing to like pitch some wilder ideas in other projects. I threw a whole like pitch to Derek of this really kind of big, weird idea. And I was just like, this might be too far out. But I just threw it to him and I'm just like, look, if you don't like this, no big deal. If you do, let's see if we can work with this. And you know, I think it kind of frees you up to do more things that you like to do once you get sort of a taste for it.
Yeah. And that's super cool. And I'm glad that it's kind of built that confidence in you too to actually voice them and share them, because that's huge. Like having ideas is one thing, but sharing them and like having your creative island to build up ideas or to just keep the creative juices flowing in a way that's not tied to things, and then allowing you to go, hey, actually, why don't we take this one further? This is an idea. Like, what do you think? That's
Right.
amazing.
Well, yeah, part of it is courage built up by it, but part of it is also like, this is going to sound terrible. Part of it's apathy. I don't care if people think my idea is dumb anymore.
Good.
Like I think significantly older than you, Heather, and I
Oh,
think part of this is that when you get older, you just kind of like, uh, look. By this point, you either like what I'm doing or you don't. You either
yeah.
like me or you don't. You like on so many levels. I kind of don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I care about the thing I'm making. I care about the people I'm working with, and I care about people.
Yeah.
But what you think of, if I have an idea and I throw something out there and people don't like it, that's fine. Like nobody has to consume anything I'm putting out there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do pitch more ideas now, and it is kind of it's kind of freeing to not be hung up on what people think about that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think you
You'll
have
get
to get.
there. You'll
Yeah.
get there, Heather.
Yeah. I. Yeah, not caring about what people think is huge, and having the island and to have that space where you don't have to worry about it. That's awesome. And I think for a lot of people starting out on their creative journeys, you kind of blindly have that anyway. You're like, I'm going to run with this thing, and that's amazing. And then it's, you've got to have somewhere, I think, for yourself to allow that to carry on. And you think, well, I'm making this anyway because I want to, because eventually some things will creep into the side and get to you. Like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Imposter
Do
syndrome,
you
that's
feel?
what it's called too. There's that.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's a constant. That's a constant battle. Like,
I liked what you said quite a while ago in our messages was that you didn't realize that creativity came with all this baggage. And I think the creative island thing allows you to take off that baggage.
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, because I think all the pressure comes from other people.
Yeah.
Or what you think other people are thinking.
Yeah.
Whether it's imposter syndrome or Dunning-Kruger effect or just general paranoia about what people think of you. Yeah, when you just shrug that off, it's I don't know, it's freeing
Hmm.
in a way.
Yeah. I have a friend called Liberty Dude who said, if you want to make a thing, make a thing. If you want to share it, share it. If you don't, it's all good. Like, I'm paraphrasing because he said it
Yeah.
much better than that, but that's something that I've try and hang on to on the regular is if you want to make it, make it. If you want to share it, share it. If you don't, don't. There is no obligation in any of that unless you're like contractually
Right. Yeah.
signed out to
Yeah.
do it. But for other things, yeah.
But that's a good example too, is being contractually obligated.
Mm-hmm.
I I do commissions sometimes, not very often, because I I don't enjoy doing commissions.
Mm-hmm.
And it has less to do with not enjoying drawing. I put so much pressure on myself
Yeah.
I'm like, someone is paying me money for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like this has to be perfect. And I think a lot of times it results in me like not doing my best work, or like, oh, they're not paying me to draw like me. I draw like a, a hack, you know? So I have to draw bet, you know, like I'm
Yeah.
always just kind of like, nobody wants that. What they're paying me for is to draw like a professional.
Yeah.
And I will put like this weird pressure on myself to where I think sometimes I'm not doing my best work. Um and I don't know, I get really in my head about doing commissions. That is definitely a baggage that comes with it. I'll do them once in a while.
Yeah.
But as a rule, I don't enjoy them as much as I enjoy doing my own work.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you have the space to be able to not worry about your mortgage getting paid. Like that you're not relying on
Well, we
the.
still worry about it,
Oh,
but
I know. Sorry,
like
it's not like your commissions aren't hanging on.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
pressure as
dependent
well.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the 7 days of sunshine? Just to go a little deeper into that. When you first made that, did you intend to share it, or was that something that you were just sort of uh because it is like a personal growth kind of journey. I recently did the 7 days of sunshine challenge. It's wonderful, and everybody should. It's a great like get in touch with nature kind of do it yourself program
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um and I found a lot of value in it, but was it something initially that you wanted to put out in the world, or was this something that you were just, I'm going to do, I'm going to go out and find, something small in nature today? Is it something you were just consciously doing for yourself?
So, I the whole reason I did it was because I was part of a female entrepreneur association group, because I am one of those. I've worked for myself, and I was part of that group to get sort of like inspiration and learn some tools, because each month they had a training thing. So that's how I learned how to podcast. And it's also how I learned to do this challenge, in terms of they were thinking about building email lists. And I'm going to say that, and it's going to probably taint everyone from wanting to do the challenge. But the idea was to, like, when you're in a digital business, the key is to make an email list, because then you've got people to sell your product to, right? I don't like that
Right.
idea. Like, I do it. No, I don't do it. What I mean is, I've joined people's email lists. I don't build my own one. I do have it set up that way. But what I learned was how to set up a program that was delivered via email, like an automated email service. So that's what
Right.
I got from the course. But I wasn't intending to really release it. What I wanted to do was, I was struggling with my mental health at the time, and I thought, in the past, I'd use a service called Future Me, which is where you can type an email to yourself and it will send it to you in whatever time in the future that you put. So usually annually, I'd get an email from myself that I wrote the year before, and I loved that. I loved that automated thing that I could set and forget, do something, and it would pop up later. And I thought, well, I'm struggling with my mental health right now. How would I work around this? How will I keep myself accountable to do it? Because I will I will procrastinate, I will put it off, I will not do it, but I check my
Right.
emails all the time. So I was like, well, I'm going to use this setup with an email automation service that I've learned through this course that is supposed to be for building email lists, but I'll do it for myself, and I will look at all the ways that I need to work on, or how I help myself, because that's what I'd lost touch with. Like, I couldn't even think of, I'd get depressed to the point where I wouldn't do anything. and that would
Right.
just snowball and all the rest of it. So I was like, I'm gonna try this. I've learned how to set it up. I'll make it 7 days long because a week is a nice time. I'm also like a person who likes numbers, and a week is a nice number, and it's sort of enough time where you're kind of just getting into the groove of it, but it's not a huge commitment like a month or something like that that
Right.
seems too
Right.
intangible. And so I got in the zone then, and I was like, sweet, I've got a template of how I'm going to do this thing. Because sometimes having a blank page is fine, and you can, whatever happens on that page, I don't know, it could be writing, it could be drawing, whatever. That's amazing. But this, I had some framework to work with. And so I
Right.
just got in the zone, and I was like, I took the time to really get introspective and think about what it is that, like, when I start to notice when things are going wrong for me, was I noticed I don't listen to music anymore. I don't watch TV or read books. I just get very funky, and I don't do anything that brings me joy. I just shut down. So I wanted to, that's how I came up with the ideas of looking for the things that light you up and what brings you joy, and then working through inspirational things, because I'm very reliant on nature. So bringing that into finding examples that are around me, that, like, the little weeds that grow up through the concrete, they're doing it. They
Yeah.
shouldn't be
Yeah.
growing there, but
Right.
they're just doing it. They're annoying. If you if you're trying to keep your driveway clean or something, I don't know. But and I live in a valley, so I see how the weather impacts on the ranges, and how it changes things. And I love watching the last light in the evenings change the shape of the valley by putting shadows on it. And so these are all things that in that I don't actually remember how long it took me to create this thing, but I just remember that it gave me a purpose. It gave me tools and a framework to help put my ideas down of what would help me. And so it was partly from somewhere that would have made me share it with people, but it was driven by what would help myself, if that makes sense. And then I did share it at
Yeah.
the end, because I was like, I really like what I'd made, and it helped me not only make it, but I went through the thing to test it all to see if this
Right.
thing would send the emails that I wanted to send out, and if they would, do the right things. And then and then I made it, and I had no one to share it with, really. So I just sent it to friends to start with, and um, I got positive feedback, and I was like, yay, this is amazing. And so then I've just had it available, and I recently redid it because after making the podcast and not really focusing on, I've not done a creative island thing for myself for a long time. In fact, my creative island now is just reading books, and that sounds, I don't know what that sounds like, but to me, I had a little bit of a hang up going, oh, I'm not making something, I'm just absorbing something. And I'm like, well, that's okay. In this time of my life right now, I just need to absorb things and have that escapism that reading gives, where I'm in my own little world, holding a book in my hand, reading about other people and other things, and just getting inspired by those things, because I didn't have enough creative, inspiring input coming in, so that my creative island being reading right now is fine. You know, I'm
Sure.
not I'm
Yeah.
not making anything, but I'm kind of stoking up the fire on my island so that I'll be ready to make things. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. That's a really cool story that it just, I mean, you created a week-long program just out of needing to help yourself. And it's a really solid program. Like I said, I did it earlier and I kept parts of it going. Like uh I like journaled every day for I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks probably.
That's awesome.
Um Probably I'm stretching the truth there because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no way I did that every day. But
Yeah.
and I would picking out the things that were just sort of like pick out your gratitudes and
Yeah.
pick out the little things you enjoyed today and the reflection at the end of the day. I found it incredibly helpful in just like a mindfulness kind of way.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I love that you made it like that is the definition of like purely for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
and then, um, and then sharing it with other people is one of those things like, hey, I got benefit from this. Maybe
It
other
will help
people
you.
will too. I don't know if that was your
Yeah,
mindset or not, but
that
like
that
that's
that was it. I was basically trying to make something that I would like, that would work for me, and was the things that I already, because we've got mental health is a huge thing, a huge topic, and we all have tools, right? And some of us don't have enough tools, and so I thought I've got plenty of books I can read and other things, but I wanted something that was meaningful to me and a package that I could use. And I thought once I'd done it and worked through it and found, oh yeah, I like that and I like how it turned out and I think it might be helpful to others, then I'd share it. But just to clarify, it isn't an email building list thing. Like you have to sign up to an email with an email address so that it can get delivered to you, but that's all that happens. There's
right,
nothing else that
right.
happens
It's
after
not
that.
yes. No, you're not Facebook selling
No, I'm not.
selling it to people. It is a newsletter kind of
Yeah.
thing. I've gone through the same kind of thing where um I've pulled back a lot from social media,
Yeah.
especially like posting art on there because it's feeding like AI engines, and
Yeah.
I just like I'm not a big fan of that, and the algorithms and everything else that goes with social media. I've kind of just found it's been a net negative for
Mm-hmm.
me over the last couple of years, mental health wise,
Yeah.
being a big part of that. So this year I built a website and I've just sort of started posting there in the last few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
as a primary thing. And it's the same. I know where you're coming from right now of just trying to reassure people like, look, it's just signing up for like a newsletter because everybody is so paranoid about giving their information to
Yeah.
things. So when you're like, I'm like, hey, follow my blog, just put your email in.
Yeah.
You'll get an update every time I update it. And I kind of feel like people are like, I don't know, because it's gotten so nefarious
Yeah.
in the last several years that it's like I'm an individual. I am not a corporation selling your information, and you're the same way. It's like these are the grassroots things where it is like, please sign up, just sign up for an update. That's
Yeah.
all it is you'll get something in your inbox.
Yeah.
um
I
but yeah.
literally have written on there now, because I didn't before, but I have written on there now, you won't hear from me again. Like, unless someone reaches out to me and replies, which they're more than welcome to do. I do check my emails semi infrequently, but like, I will check them. And so someone who does it can reach out to me, but I will not send any other emails once the 7 days of Sunshine Challenge is completely finished. That's it. Because I don't like that. Like, I have too many emails coming into my account anyway. But like you said, you kind of pulled what you wanted from it and you've used parts of it or whatever. And that's what I want for people. I just literally want to share a tool so you can use it or not. Or, maybe you like the checklist thing and you can have that on your fridge. One of my friends, she printed it off. That was her favorite thing. That was the main thing she got out of it, was a printable thing she could stick on her fridge just to remind herself to check in with herself. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yay, cool. Like, none of it's even, the whole thing isn't anything new. It's just a slightly different way of threading it together. And that's what worked for me. And so I thought maybe it'll be good for someone else.
And
And
it
I,
is. I'm gonna when I put this over the video, I'm gonna link to the 7 days of Sunshine Challenge.
oh, cool.
Because I do think people should. I mean, I don't know if we're talking about Creative Island anymore, but I do
Yeah.
think people should do that.
But maybe it will
Um,
help
uh,
them with their creative island. You never know. Like, so something like that. If someone feels overwhelmed about having a creative island and you're kind of stuck, I have a couple of things that helped me. So, do you know Felicia
okay.
Day? Have you heard of?
Yes,
Yeah. So Felicia
I
Day.
don't know her. I know
No,
who she is. Yeah.
you've heard of Felicia Day. So she published a book called Embrace Embrace Your
Embrace your
Weird.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Zach interviewed her, which was amazing. But when I saw that, it's like prompts of things to get yourself creatively doing something. And you don't have to share that. Like, it's kind of like a journal with prompts. And so she's got you doing different things. And she's quite funny and, genuine. You can feel the genuineness
Yeah.
through the pages, and so like stuff like that helps when you've got a bit of a prompt. If you feel a little bit unsure how to get started or do something like that. So yeah, the 7 days of
Yeah.
sunshine challenge could be that. I mean, it doesn't have to be.
100%.
I don't get any. I, yeah, I don't even check who's like. That's a whole other thing. Don't worry. Just, I feel so. As an aside, I feel like what you were saying about people being wary of putting their information into things. Um. Yeah, I don't know. I have a conundrum about having it there. Like I love it, and I'm glad that I made it, and I'm glad that I'm sharing it. But at the same time, I also don't want it to be perceived as a hook for someone
Right.
else. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I know it's but I mean, like that's a little out of your control,
Yeah,
like
no.
that's just like that's the world we live in now, is that everything online is nefarious. I had somebody on my Facebook comments yesterday um who kind of wanted to buy what was like interested in buying art from me or something.
Hmm.
I don't think English was her first language, so it was a little uh uh, grammar wise, it was a little unclear. So I messaged her and I was just like, "Are you interested in buying some art?" Yes. I sent her a link to my store and she said, "I don't click links because of like personal safety." And I'm just sort of like, "I'm sorry, this is where you buy things, you know." And I just I'm like, that is where we've gotten to, is that people don't want to click through. People don't want to
Yeah,
sign up for things. People don't, and you just kind of have to go, okay, like
yeah,
I can do so much for you, but like yeah, I don't blame you in some ways, but like this is the world we're living in here.
yeah,
So yeah, no, I get it. You don't want to be perceived as like I'm selling something. I'm I'm hustling you in some way. I'm trying to get something out of you, because it's, in the case of the 7 days, like that is just purely a thing that exists on your website
yeah,
as a tool.
yeah,
And I think I think that catches people off guard when somebody just like selflessly shares something.
yep,
It's a little that's a little depressing to think about, but it is just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of rare
yeah.
now.
So I'm not part of that entrepreneur association anymore, and while that's a little bit sad because I enjoyed each month hearing from different experts in their fields around business related things, and I learned a lot of I learned about Trello on there. I learned about the email automation thing and all other things that helped me, which is great. But I just then found it like it wasn't, because I wasn't going to go down that road of making signups and leading people down a sales funnel,
Right.
that it wasn't for me as much anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And I'm happy. So
so it
on,
goes.
you said about your website and you've been posting to there. That's cool. And I think that having a website is two things. One, it gives you a space that's your own. If you own the domain name and the hosting, that's important. Um, and it gives you the freedom to work within whatever creativity and coding skills you have, depending on how fancy you want to make your website.
Yeah.
Um, but there's no pressure there. Like you're not limited to some other platform and how they do things. And so on
Yeah.
my one, I literally put a blog post out whenever I feel like it or get around to it or have time, which is very limited. But I just like rambling. It's like an online journal thing. And I don't need to share it publicly, but I do a little bit for my accountability to myself, just because it's nice for me to have that repository. I probably wouldn't do it the same if I was just doing it for myself. And I don't do it for myself. Like my creative island thing is kind of falling off the bandwagon, but I'm using it as like a creative island because I don't care who goes to look at it. I don't share it. I'm not worried about any of that. It's just, it makes it a little bit more tangible for me having it online.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 100%.
yeah.
That especially what you said about like you can't control what other platforms do with your
Yeah.
content. Like Facebook and Instagram and doing the AI thing.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing to me. I've posted art there for well over a decade, and to just all of a sudden it's like, oh, this isn't a safe place to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, for nefarious reasons, and
Mm.
it's just sort of like, oh, once I post it there, they can do whatever they want. It's out of your control.
Yeah.
And so I do, like I do make YouTube videos, and I do still, share things here and there. I have a Discord server where I share art and a couple art groups, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, I found it. I put off building a website for years, and I finally was like, okay, like this, it, you won't it won't get to as many people, but I will have more control over it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that became important to me. And I think that is somehow, my brain's a little slow tonight. That is somehow connected to a creative island kind of idea.
Yeah.
Like, this is smaller, but it's mine.
Yeah. And also, I think it's a creative island in a way because it's your island, except that that one is something that people could technically visit. You're not necessarily making it for someone else, but someone could come and look at your webpage and interact with what you've got there. And like I keep journals and stuff too. I haven't written in them lately, but you can have the very private one, which is at home that no one sees, and be that creative island thing, or you can have your own space on the internet, which I still think is somewhat of a creative island.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You you make it your own.
Yeah.
Your site has all kinds of things on there.
I
Your
know.
site has books and music and everything, and it is just sort of like, I do feel like, oh, we're getting to see Heather's brain. Like this is like all the sections of her brain are just like laid out here on this website,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool.
Thanks.
I think it's cool that you share so many aspects of yourself. Um, I do other things, but I don't share them as much. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think it's so cool that you put so many um cool sides of yourself out there.
Yeah, that's definitely a personal preference thing. And I think it's because my brain works like I need an outlet for everything. So, like, I have what books I like to read, I have what movies I've watched, which I haven't updated in ages. And, but just having somewhere I can put that and see that, I like it digitally. I love notebooks in a way, but I also get hung up on the fact that I have to turn a page and it's not really, I can't see it in a big picture, if that makes sense. Whereas
Interesting.
a website
Yeah.
allows me to see it. That's what I love about Trello in a way, because I can filter things. And I used to love OneNote. I used that a lot for scrapbooking ideas and things because you could just put stuff in and move it around, and it wasn't fixed to a position. So OneNote would have been my main thing that I used. I used journals, and then just having a website just helps me. I don't know what it does. It just a repository, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
It's
A front-facing one.
it's what social media is.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is like, this is what people use social media for, is to just, put out whatever edited version of themselves they
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
This is you getting to do it
My way.
on right, in your terms. And like, you can have comments on, you can have comments off, you can expound on ideas in the way that you can't on, say, Twitter.
Yeah.
Or X, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The troll's paradise that is. It is. It's. I think that it can be so much more personal and so much more customized, which is, I think, again, brings it back around to like the creative island. Like,
Yeah.
this is the thing that gets to be yours, no matter whether other people like the way you've laid it out or not.
Yeah, or if they even look at it.
Or if they even look at it. Exactly. Like, it is just kind of, I mean, you were around in the early days of the internet, like the idea that just a regular person could have their own website.
Yeah.
And people were just kind of going, well, what would I put on there?
Yeah.
And it's like anything you want. Like
Yeah.
it was like the Wild West kind of thing, It's yeah, I don't know. Um, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to have your own website. And I'm sorry it took me so long to actually like put one together, but um,
You got
yeah,
there.
I don't
I
know.
don't think,
I got there.
yeah. If that's what you want to do. I mean, a website's a whole other thing because it's expensive. It's a very expensive way of going about having a creative island in a way. Um, but it
It is.
is.
It is. I do. Yeah, I do have to acknowledge, like, it is a privilege to be able to afford,
Yeah. Yeah.
hosting and things like that. Like, it's easy for me to sit here and go, oh yeah, everyone should have a website, and then people are like, well, I got a budget for that. Like it's, and yeah, and not everyone's in that position. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound like a jerk by
No,
just going, yeah, come on, go get a website. What are you waiting for?
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean that either. That you were saying that, but I was just thinking like I was trying to think about this creative island thing, and like if you want to, I think a website's a great way of sharing things that are your creative island because it's like your own, but not necessary, not compulsory. Do whatever you want. um, yeah. I don't know. Sorry, that was.
Yeah, no, that was it. Heather, what is one thing uh that you do for yourself that people have told you like, oh, you should do this like on a bigger scale?
Um,
Does that make
yeah,
sense? Is there something like a podcast where people have like been like, oh, you should do this all the time?
yeah. I think if you have, I, for me, it happened more when I got into communities with other podcasters because we all get excited about making a thing and sharing a thing. I think, and um, podcasting community is great in that respect because we understand like you've got this creative passion and you want to share it, and we're all rooting for you to get there. You know, um, I've even had people just like I've responded to someone's podcast episode that they've had, and they're like, "Oh, we should do something with that." And I'm like, I can't. Like, I'd love to sometimes have chats and just make it go on and do something with it, but other times I just have an opinion, and that's where I want to leave it because I don't have the.
Right.
I can't do the further thing and expound on it or whatever. If expound is a
Are you
word.
talking about me right now and
Nope.
how I've forced you to have this conversation?
No. Okay. So
About a conversation we had 3 years ago.
no. So create this. Let me just be clear. Our conversations have been
I
amazing, and I'm so grateful I have a support person in you, but a friend, first and foremost. And this Creative Island thing has been huge. Like, being able to articulate what it is that I was feeling, like being on my own, making my sunshine challenge, or just the very initial stages when I was doing a podcast, I felt like I was on an island. And to share that with you and have you understand and relate that to your life and run with it, because you have, which is, I think, amazing, has been so good. And so I'm pretty sure I said to you the other day that I was keen to do because we talked about recording for this, and
right,
we didn't
yes.
get around to it. So I was like, just so you know, I'm still keen. Um, so whether I pushed you into it, I don't know, but yeah, it's just
No. I'm glad you said that because I had thought about asking you, and I just I didn't want to burden you uh
oh
to do this if you didn't have the bandwidth or the time or any, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Ever ask someone, hey, do you want to do this thing? And then you're just like, oh, I'm just bothering them with something
no,
else. Like, I get that a lot. That's a Midwest thing.
oh,
But no, I mean, we talked about this at the very beginning too, but like, I think that's why uh, the Creative Island idea stuck with me so much is when you talked about it, it it was one of those concepts I couldn't articulate, but
Yeah.
when you described it, it was like that's the thing I've been thinking of,
Yeah.
and I couldn't really get a solid handle on it until you did it for me, basically. So I think that's why this was so important to me from the time we started talking about it.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
I've dedicated 3 years of my life to
I think you were doing
it.
it anyway. And it's just like you say, having a way to articulate it and sort of visualize it and connect with it in a way that's not just like, I'm doing this thing, but I don't really, or it just fits better as a puzzle piece because you can see more detail in it, you know? I don't know, something like
Yeah,
that. So I've been invested in Creative Island. And what I said before about when I listen to someone's podcast and have a comment on it, and then someone's like, oh, we should do this. And I kind of pull back. It's not everything. And I don't think you should not approach people and ask them if they'd be
no,
keen to do
no,
something.
I know.
But like, I was just trying to say that sometimes it's happened where I don't even know how to say that. I want to say like people, we can't almost sometimes it's like we can't have just conversations because they have to be content, you know?
Right.
And not everyone's like that, and not every situation is like that either. And sometimes I'm super passionate about it, and yes, let's go. I want to do that. I want to take this further. But I don't know. I think that comes from being more in that space where we're all sharing things. Because I definitely didn't have that before. Because no one knew what a podcast was before I started. No one was like, you should make a thing. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that when you talk about podcasters,
Yeah,
where the thing every podcaster wants is to have an interesting conversation and have it recorded.
yeah,
So if you have a comment for somebody that is going to lead into a deeper conversation, a podcaster's first instinct is let's turn a microphone on and talk about this. And it's
yeah,
like, no, 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 no. Let's just talk about it. And I've done it too. I've
yeah, yeah,
had, I watched a series called Midnight Mass a couple of years ago, and just went on Twitter and just like, I love this. I love this series. And my friend was like, oh, we should have a call and talk about it. I go, yeah, we can record it. And he's like, oh, well, I just kind of wanted to talk to you about it. I'm like, oh, of course. Like, I forget, we used to do this for fun, like kind of thing. It's a real easy trap to fall into, I think.
yeah. Um, I was going to tell you another story about like because my creative island when I was a lot younger was about poetry. I don't know. I might have mentioned that earlier when we were talking, but um, I used to write poetry all the time, and that was just a me thing. Yeah, I said it was. I said that earlier because I said I didn't really do journaling. I wrote poetry. Anyway, I don't know if you've heard of poetry.com where you can like submit poems. I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, but they had like a something I found online, and I was like, oh, I'll submit a poem that I wrote. And then they took it, and I was like, is this a scam? Because, like, even back in the day, like
Right.
22 years ago,
Yeah.
it was when I did it. And I was like, I don't know about this. And they're like, oh, we've chosen your poem to be part of our thing. We're going to publish an anthology of poetry. And I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. But is it
Yeah.
scam? I don't know. Anyway,
Yes.
I went along with it. And I have in my hands right now a book that was published in 2022, and it has one of my poems in it. And I never thought my poetry would get published because it was just a thing I did for myself. And the poem that I wrote for this submission was I was in a classroom on a day that wasn't even a school day. Like it was a day of the week, like during the week, but the school was open to students who had nowhere else to go for the day, but they weren't teaching classes. I don't know
Okay.
why I
Yeah.
was there. Anyway, sitting in this room and it was really sunny and like I was bored out of my tree and I was like, oh, well, I'll write a poem. And I wrote this poem down. And it's kind of weird and quirky, but I loved it. And I was like, oh, I'll submit that one. And it got chosen. And I felt so amazed. Um, no
Yeah.
one I know is ever going to read this poetry book because it was like one of those weird things. But it was just a neat thing for me to see my words in print and have a copy. And yeah, I don't know. It was just
No,
this amazing thing.
that's totally valid. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, It's like a byproduct of the creative island.
Yeah,
Is yeah, it gets to go out in the world,
yeah,
and it's still on your terms.
yeah. And then taking that back a little bit in something that's not so commercial, I guess, is like my aunt used to do the same thing and she was a huge inspiration for me. And she wrote poetry and she just published her own, like she got them printed and put a cover on them. And she just had her poetry printed in a bound book for herself.
Yeah,
And that was like a very big inspiration to me as I was growing up.
that's never been easier to do than right now.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, yeah, you could put all your poetry out there, Heather.
Yeah, and just books for me to read, not for anybody else. But I could just have them
You
bound
could do
really
that too. Yeah,
nicely so I could read them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think poetry is amazing because I can't do it.
Oh, well, I
Um,
can't draw, so there
and
you go.
I mean, I just think it's like a real uh, it's like a real language skill. I see stump. See, I can't even form the sentence. It's like a real. I don't know. There's something about people who can manipulate language in that way
And I
that I
think the
just
same about
find.
people who can express it in an art form, like in a picture and a visual, because I get so much from that, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mutual Admiration Society.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can find something, I think, that is your outlet, whether it's writing words or drawing or messing with colors and it's not a specific drawing or whatever it is, gardening, I don't know, something that's yours and that you feel good, get joy from it, energizes you, it doesn't suck from your life, it just gives you something that's huge. And I hope that we all have that in some way.
Yeah. I advocate for that like all the time.
Yeah.
That people should have a passion. People should have some, I think, creative outlet. I think people who don't even think they're creative, oftentimes just don't understand that they're creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I always look at my dad, and I think my dad could have been some kind of artist,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think anyone ever encouraged him when he was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. It's just like my dad grew up on a farm and did a lot of farm work as a kid. He didn't really do extracurricular stuff. It was all work, you
Yeah.
know? So it becomes one of those things like when my dad got older, or when was an adult, I remember he used to weld like these little sculptures out of like nuts and bolts and little pieces of metal. And one Christmas, like he gave one to his dad. We had one in our house. It's called the Thinker, and it was like this little man made out of bolts and nuts and bolts, and he was like on a toilet reading a newspaper. It
Cool.
was just like a stick figure that he had welded together. It's that kind of thing. And then my dad will sit there and he'll watch me draw something. He'll go, "I could never do that." And it's like, "Dad, you could like you've done this, like
Yeah.
this kind of thing." Um, where it just was yeah, I think my dad doesn't think of himself as a creative person, but I think he totally is, and it's one of those things that's made me believe that I think most people have some creative streak in them.
Yeah.
It's just a question of whether or not um, they they figure out how to get enjoyment out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, not even like make a living or anything. I just think people should have something that they enjoy doing. Even creatives, I advocate this a lot of times too. Is like if your career is creative, you should have a separate creative hobby that is not related to making money
Yeah.
at all. I do art,
Music.
but I also like play music
Yeah.
just for me.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that, Heather?
So not at the moment.
I mean,
um
your regular job is not. I
Creative.
mean, it's not a creative. I mean, I'm sure there's creativity involved in it, but not. It's not like you're not making art or welding sculpture or anything like that. It's different. So then your creative stuff is your creative stuff, right?
Yeah. I think so. Over the years, I've dabbled in things like in my office, I have a crystal dot art thing that I did, and I've put my own artwork up in my thing. So I like to dabble in things. I've knitted. I don't knit often. I can knit. I've just recently tried crocheting, but that's quite difficult, and so I need more time and brain space to work that out.
Oh,
So I
that's weird.
dabble.
My wife finds crocheting much easier than knitting.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think once you get a handle on it, like it's a process, right? It's steps, and I think once I figure it out, I might get there because I can. I like to turn my hand at different crafty activities rather than stick with one thing. That's all I do because
Right.
I get hung up on having one thing. um, But you can tell from what I do and share publicly is that I have many things and I just, yeah. Um, but at the moment for me, like, I'm not really creating anything. I just am in the absorbing phase of recharging myself.
And that's cool too.
Yeah.
Don't you sound so defeated when you
Well,
say
no.
that.
Okay.
And
Okay. So,
I just don't make me worry about you, Heather.
no, I don't mean it like that. Like, I want to say, like, the creativity is not just stuff that we make either. It can be like I am getting slightly creative with my Instagram, which is an outwardly sharing thing. It's not really a creative island, although I don't care who follows me or how many people interact with whatever. But I like taking photos of the books that I get and sharing them. And it's not arty, and I haven't done anything fantastic there. Um, a while back, I went through and re-edited all my social media posts that I made for Sunshine and Powercuts because I went from a blue color that I had to start with, and I'm like, that's nice and it feels really calming, but I want to sort of align it with the sunshine element. So I made them all a theme of like a yellow, oh my gosh, yellow, orange, gold, that kind of color.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't shared them anywhere yet, so that was a creative island project. I was grateful to past me for making so much content way back
Right.
then that all I had to do was, creatively tweak them, and then I've left it at that. But you can have creative ideas. You can. I'm going to have to soon make a new constitution for a club, and that's not arty, but I mean the word thing. Like I will get slightly. It has to follow a legal process, so it can't be too out there. But like
Get as poetic as the law will allow.
join my club. It's going to be amazing. But yeah, I think also on the thing is you don't always have to be putting stuff out there. Part of being creative is that experience phase of absorbing in other creativity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's huge
Yeah.
actually. And that's one of the things that pulling back from social media
Yeah.
has forced me to reckon with is like, oh, you don't constantly have to be throwing it in people's faces.
No.
Like you can sort of scroll Instagram and see what other people are doing and talk to them about their thing, and you don't have to be putting your thing out there, and then when it's ready, then you put it out there. Like it is just sort of like we've gotten so used to like, oh, I've got this thing done, let me throw it out into the world immediately.
Yeah.
And just bask in all the feedback I get from it. And it's just kind of like, no. Now I think this is all related to what we're talking about here. And it's just all about like making things on your terms.
Yeah.
And how I think that's really a healthy thing to do. I think I don't know. I feel so much more fulfilled in
That's
doing
awesome.
things this way.
Yeah. And that I think is the key. Making things on your terms. That's what the creative island is. And you have to think about it then because you've got to know what your terms are and what you're willing to do and what's right for you.
100%.
Yeah.
And that even changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I think that's part of it too is rolling with those changes as they go. Like not only like the changes to the thing itself, but like you started the 7 Days of Sunshine for yourself, and then it changed into like, well, let me share this. So then
Yeah.
it was offered to other people, and then that sort of morphed into the podcast,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And it just sort of like becomes other things until you're ready, and you pulled it back when you were ready. You were rolling with all those changes, and um I think that's incredibly cool, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
One
you
thing I
know,
have to say is I wish that I had a different support, different, better. I don't know what the word is, but I didn't have enough of a support thing in the background. Like I had people supporting the podcast for sure, and I had patrons, which was incredible. But it wasn't the same as having like um, the support that I needed personally to be able to keep going with that. My creative island thing, like if I'd kept some of it for myself in a way and had my island and just been able to work through things, I think I would have carried on with Sunshine and Power Cuts for a bit longer. But I folded when life got hard because I just didn't have enough of a support structure behind myself to keep going. I mean at home, like personal, but also like
right.
um I didn't have enough tools for myself to. My 7 days of sunshine challenge can only go so far, and I need to work on my mental health all the time. So I needed other tools that I am still trying to work on getting to be able to get back into that creative sharing outside space. So I think for people, like, make something if you want to make it, don't if you don't, share it if you do. And if you do share it, the key thing is to work out your terms, like you said, but also have a bit more of a support network. Try and find, if you don't already have them available to you, because that will be that's something. I don't know how much support you need on a creative island, but if you want to bring it on, bring it on. But yeah, when you get to the point where it goes beyond your island, sometimes you need a solid foundation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's 100%.
Yeah.
Because it is. You're right. It is. We could be on an island to a point,
Yeah.
but it's if you live in a house full of people, the way I do, uh, everybody kind of has to understand, like, yeah, I'm doing this thing over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of respect that you're doing your thing over there. And I'm really lucky that way. Like,
That's awesome.
I say all the time, I have a wife who doesn't read comic books,
Yeah.
but she respects that I make them.
Yeah.
She may not even uh uh really care about comic books, but she cares that I care about it.
Yeah.
And I get support that way. And I've drawn for most of my kids' lives. So my kids just understand this is this thing that I've always done.
Yeah.
And so it is just like I'm really lucky that way.
That's cool.
Um but yeah, you do have to at a certain point, like, your island is what you make, but people have to understand that you're on your island when
Yeah.
you're on your island, kind of thing. Like, you have your space in your house. Like, I'm sure, like, that's Heather's space, and that's super helpful to keeping your own, like, segmented area where you do your thing at.
Yeah. Like I said before, I couldn't survive if I didn't have it. I don't use it as
Right.
often now either. So that's a whole other conversation probably for another one, since we've kind of, I don't know, but like even making your island, making time and space for your island wherever it is can be tricky, but I don't know, it's like finding the things that bring you joy, like keep reconnecting with it and checking in with yourself, I think is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. You've mentioned a few times about how Sunshine and Power Cuts didn't keep going. I think the other misconception people have with the internet and with creative projects is that they have to go on forever.
Thank
And I
you so
really,
much.
I really, really think that so many times, uh, when you run out of steam on a project, you should probably just stop doing, especially an independent project.
Yeah.
There's no corporate interest keeping this thing going. You know what I mean? We've all watched TV shows where they're like, they really should have stopped making this show like 3 seasons earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but I am so, uh, this sounds like a left-handed compliment. I'm so happy when people stop doing a thing sometimes. Like
Yeah.
not that a thing has gotten bad. I think some people know exactly when to stop. I've gotten my thing to the place I wanted to get it to. Now I pull the plug on it and it just lives as this thing. And some people, I think when they don't have the bandwidth for something and they just keep forcing it out there, they would be much better off to just like take a step back and say, I'm gonna just put this down here
Yeah.
and and let that exist. And maybe I'll revive this later. Maybe I'll start something totally new later.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. And I again, maybe I'm just reading into your tone in the wrong way, but I feel like you talk about that as this like regretful thing, and I think you made a wonderful podcast in Sunshine and Power Cuts. I do still have it on my phone and go back and listen to random episodes sometimes, because I think it's an inherently positive podcast. It's like celebrating nature. All your Sunshine episodes
Yeah.
are they're just like nice to put on sometimes. Um, and I just think that like whether or not you ever make new content for that, this exists, and episodes about nature are kind of evergreen.
Yeah.
They don't need to be updated. You know, like it's always relevant.
Yeah.
It's always like a really good thing that I enjoy, whether you make new stuff or not. I don't think you have anything to be sorry about that you didn't keep pushing this boulder up a hill when it felt like a boulder going uphill. So I think Sunshine and Power Cuts is wonderful, no matter how much of it there is.
I thank you,
And
Phil.
I just think that's a lesson a lot of people could take from you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that you acknowledged that because like I thank you also for your kind words. But my message to people would be that like when I got into podcasting at first, it was for me, and that's why it was amazing. And then it got to be about the other things, and even the platforms you put your podcast on, they all went through a thing where they would basically ruin. Like there was pressure from all sorts of different podcasting industry people, like people providing the podcast hosts to keep making a thing. And I thought that was ridiculous. Like,
Right.
gosh, Podchaser, is that one of them? Like, I don't want to name names, but they were one in
It
particular.
sounds familiar.
They like, whatever, the platforms where you'd see podcasts, they put red text, big red text saying, like, this podcast hasn't released in so long. Like, pod
Yes.
fade was a thing that was a dirty word. Like, you couldn't, if your podcast pod faded, you'd failed in the podcasting world. And I was like, holy crap, people make limited series. We do that for TV. Like you said, we watch shows and we think
I
they could be.
love limited series
Yeah,
on and in comics, on
yeah,
TV. I love short podcasts that are like 12 episodes. I
yeah,
love them. Yes.
same. And so they're a thing that exists and people are happy about it and enjoy it. But no, for some reason for podcasting, that's not okay. And I was so disheartened by that. I emailed a bunch of them and I said, look, you realize that you're not only deterring people from listening to content that is evergreen, like you said, where if it's not time
Yeah.
sensitive, this stuff can live on the internet forever and be relevant to someone. You're stopping them from listening because they haven't put out another episode, because they haven't dragged it on for another thing. I got
Right.
so angry about that. Like, oh, it makes me mad. And so my thing, my negativity I have around it is just because I had goals that I wanted to do for it, and I obviously haven't let let
Sure.
myself whatever. So, but
But
yes,
like I said, things change.
that's
Goals
right.
change.
That's right.
All kinds of things change. I think you're sitting in a good spot right now, Heather, honestly.
Thank you.
Like like your goals for that maybe weren't realized at the times, but are those still your goals? You know,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
has changed in that time. Yeah, I agree. Like for a platform whose business is getting people to listen to podcasts, to deter people from listening to podcasts, uh, because they haven't met an update schedule that the podcaster didn't set for themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is so ludicrous. You're saying because there's no episode this week, nothing in the back catalog is
Yeah.
worth your time.
Yeah.
Like, which is, if you're not a daily news show, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like
You shouldn't
there's,
exist.
it's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's wild.
Yeah.
But I have seen that before on podcatchers. Like, oh, this has been 90 days without an episode. It's like Austin and I take like 3 to 6 months off between
Yeah.
seasons. Like we broke up seasons and
Yeah.
stuff just so we would have breaks. And it's like, yeah, okay. what a weird thing. I'm podcasting. Please,
I love the idea of
please
podcasting.
change how you do everything.
Yeah, pretty much. Change everything. Change who you are and why you do things.
And why you do things. Yes.
I loved that because it's kind of like pirate radio, right? It's like you and your stage and however you want to do it. An episode is a length of time of audio recorded. It can be whatever it wants to be within that time that makes them all so varied and so different. And so it shouldn't matter how many there are or how often they come out. And I'm adamant about that. And like, I did try and tie up my last episode with saying, the long dark, and no one got that, but I specifically called it that because I knew there wouldn't be a long one for ages. But I didn't want to go, well, I'm not recording again for a long time and blah, 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 blah. That was too on the nose for me. So I'm just like, if someone picked it up later and I do manage to come back to it, yes, on the little playlist, there's going to be date difference. But if someone's listening all the way through and I've made another episode, it's not going to make diddly squat of a difference to them. And I realize that's alienating the people who were listening at the time when I released it. But like, again, I want them to pick it up and it carry on and it not be a big deal. So, I think going back to, like you said, though, your own terms, and that's really important for anything. And so it would be better if platforms didn't hinder that by making arbitrary things that deter people from interacting and engaging with your content. But just you're happy with the fact that you record when you record, have the break between when you have a break and come back when you're ready. Yeah.
That's the only way I can do it, honestly.
Yeah, and that's good.
And I think so too. Yeah. And also, yeah, I like the description of it as being like pirate radio because first of all, it sounds badass. It makes podcasting sound so much cooler than it is. But also it is just sort of like Austin and I have never like pursued sponsors.
Yeah.
And or anything like that. It's just sort of like, no, this way we get to do it the way we want to do it. We had a couple networks reach out and be like, hey, join our network. Like, we just want to do this on our terms, on our schedule, on our dime, like it just, all of it was like, we don't need any of that stuff. We're not, again, like it becomes like the luxury of, we're not trying to make money here. This is literally just something we do for fun.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is. But at the same time, I like to think that if somebody stumbles on our podcast, they're not going to go, oh, they haven't put an episode out since December. Well, I guess the 110 episodes they have aren't worth any. It's like, no, you can go through. There's a movie in there for you somewhere. Like, it is just kind of like, it's so insane.
Yeah. So you asked me before about where people have asked me to do something with, like, that's a great idea, you should do something with it. I've seen that more of other people too, though, like Bandrew from Podcastage. He has lots of cool ideas and he dabbles in things. And then people are like, you should do this. And I hate the word should. Like when you're talking to someone else about something, it's like, you should do this. It's like, no, let's back up. You, the person saying the should, wants them to do this thing, but they don't should anything. Like, it should be reframed like, I'd love it if you did this. which is on the person who's suggesting it rather than putting that pressure on the other person going, you should make a video on
You
this.
should
You should.
let me give you a to-do list
Yeah,
of
yeah.
things that I want you to do. Yeah.
And get on it. And why haven't you done it yet? Yeah. That's just something I've noticed is the should word.
I've had people, oh, you should write a book.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how hard writing a book is?
Yeah.
Like, you just like gave me a monumental task. Like,
But you should do it.
Heather, I feel like I've taken up a whole chunk of your day.
No, you haven't.
So,
And I've loved this. Every minute I have loved it. You haven't taken up my time. This has been an amazing, amazing time that we've shared together. So thank you.
I agree. I've had a blast with this. I do want to thank you for talking about Creative Island stuff with me.
Thank you.
And for talking about it with me in the first place. This has been great.
It's been amazing and I love it and I appreciate you very much.
I appreciate you as well, and we should totally do this again very soon.
Sounds good.
All right, cool.